Time now for our rants and raves, starting with you, Joanna.
I have a rave for Francis Collins, who is the director of the National Institutes of Health and distinguished himself recently by not being completely embarrassed by Sacha Baron Cohen. So Sacha Baron Cohen has this new Showtime series. It's sort of like his old HBO series, the Ali G Show. This is Who is America? He goes and he dupes public officials. Basically, he puts on an incredible disguise and a persona. And he got Joe Walsh, the former congressman from Illinois, to read something on air. No, he was the one who said that he thought that toddlers should be armed. It was some kind of ridiculous thing that he said. So they call up Francis Collins from the NIH. They say, we want to do a show where a non-scientist is talking about science. Francis Collins goes and he sits down for the interview. He realizes pretty quickly that something is up. But he takes the opportunity to just sort of, teach a little bit about science.
The best one with Sacha Baron Cohen happens to be Andy Rooney. If you've got 40 seconds, Google that one.
I'll have to check it out.
The Andy Rooney you know?
Oh, who was on to this guy in about a nanosecond and threw him out of the office.
Wow. So Francis Collins claims to have been on to have been almost as sharp as that, but sort of stayed with it instead.
All right, Adam.
I have a rave for a publication I'd actually never heard of before, World Magazine. It is a, I think, bi-weekly Christian magazine, not usually my cup of tea. But they just did this really good piece looking at the way Liberty University, the Falwell-founded Liberty University, handles their student journalists and the way they basically keep them from writing anything that might make the university itself look bad and anything that might make President Trump look bad.
Why did they go there?
Well, that is the, there was a lot of outrage on social media. And my first thought was, well, what do you expect if you go to Liberty University? But it's a really good piece, especially, I think, coming from a publication that shares, broadly speaking, the Liberty University worldview. I liked seeing an unexpected source call out some pretty bad behavior by this institution, so it's worth a read.
Yeah, I did read it. But anyway, Callie.
So I have a rant for something that's happening to student journalists. Speaking of student journalists, this was a piece that was written by, an op-ed piece written by Catherine Reed, who is an associate professor at the University of Missouri, which everybody knows is a good journalism school. And the trickle-down effect is what she's talking about, that so much of President Trump has now been picked up by other people in terms of journalists being the enemy of the state, that when the student journalists went out to cover, they were spat upon and yelled at. And they were, well, what is happening? Yes. And so now that part of the preparation for them going into the world of journalism is to talk to them about this. And she was talking about how horrible it was, that this is where we've come, that, this is very dangerous stuff. And she said, and the sad part about it is these students have worked really hard to be prepared, to ask good questions, to go out and cover it. They had been covering it, and they were stunned. But this is a direct impact from the kind of language. And people repeated it. Yeah, you're fake news. They're like, what are you? These are student journalists. So anyway, that's my rant, and it's very serious. Again, the security for journalists, I just want to bring it up again, even at the student level.
Dan.
Yeah, I have a rave for the publisher of the Ferndale Enterprise. It's a small newspaper a couple hundred miles north of Sacramento, California. Her name is Caroline Titus. And we've talked often about how small newspapers and large newspapers as well are having a difficult time trying to figure out an economic model to make it sustainable. Well, she has decided to open up the offices of the newspaper as a B&B through Airbnb. Renting out rooms for $175 a night. Wow. It's located in a Victorian home, as they describe it, on a very quaint street of other Victorian homes where you can go and watch, people, their shops and restaurants and so forth. So it's kind of interesting. There's a little bit of backstory here, and that she was in a dispute with the town because her husband was let go from a job there, and so there was a lot of litigation. So they ran into some money problems as well. So you have that, and the reason she was getting into this spat with the town is because she was accusing them of trying to have her spike some stories that she was writing about the town. So anyway, there's this legal dispute. It's a great story. So she has all these legal bills. She has kids in college. How do you keep this paper, this small paper, going? So she not only is the publisher, but also runs this Airbnb. And there was an interesting quote. This was that she gave to Pointer.org. It says, quote, it's a hell of a lot easier to clean toilets and make some beds up and host people than it is to put out a weekly newspaper.
That's good.
So publisher and then cleaning toilets at a B&B to keep the paper going.
All right, well, finally tonight, I have a rave, wink, wink, for Ainsley Earhart. She's the Fox News robo-blonde.
Fox and Friends.
Who got the really tough, hard-hitting interview with Donald Trump this week, and here's a little example of that.
Mr. President, thank you so much for sitting down with me. How are you doing? How is our country's First Lady doing, and how are your children? How do you handle all of that? What grade do you give yourself so far?
It's just an embarrassment. I mean, she did ask some of the news of the day. She did have to do that, but she was there with the legs crossed, with the, what do you call that? With the shoes when the toe toe cleavage.
Oh.
I mean, toe. I mean, it was just like classic.
The one counterintuitive thing I heard, I think someone tweeted this week about that interview, is that it's one of those examples of allowing him, when he gets comfortable with someone, he sometimes says things that are ridiculous and newsworthy, and allowing him, again, that kind of flexibility, to say
but
what
it was
he's going to
pandering.
say.
It was toe curling.
It was cringe-inducing, but I do think that point Joanna raises is legit, because if he was facing a more skeptical interviewer, he's not going to give himself an A+.
That's why I gave her a rave.
He's not going to talk about...
He got the toe cleavage just sucking in.
All right, that is it for our show. Tell us what you think. Email us, tweet us, or leave a comment. We're always on at beatthepress.org.